When people hear a statement like this, the first instinct is to interpret it in a purely physical sense. They assume that proximity, touch, or access automatically signals emotional ownership. But that assumption reveals more about our misunderstandings of human psychology than it does about relationships. Because the truth is far more complex and far more important to understand if you want meaningful, lasting connections. Human beings are not wired to equate physical closeness with emotional commitment. In fact, psychology consistently shows that physical interaction, on its own, is one of the weakest indicators of genuine attachment. What truly matters is the context in which that interaction happens. Is there trust? Is there emotional safety? Is there mutual respect? Without these elements, physical closeness becomes superficial, something that may feel significant in the moment, but carries no real depth or long-term meaning. Respect is the real signal, not touch, not access, not momentary intimacy. When someone allows you into their personal space, it doesn't automatically mean they are emotionally invested in you. It means, at best, that they feel comfortable in that moment. But comfort is not commitment. Comfort can be temporary. Comfort can exist without intention. And most importantly, comfort can be misunderstood. This is where many people make a critical mistake. They interpret access as approval, and approval as attachment. They skip the entire process of building a real connection, and jump straight to conclusions that haven't been earned. And in doing so, they not only misread the other person, they also undermine their own ability to build something genuine. Because real connection is not something you assume. It's something you build. It's built through consistency, through emotional presence, through the ability to understand another person beyond surface-level interactions. It's built when someone feels heard, valued, and respected, not when they feel interpreted or claimed. There is also a deeper philosophical layer to this. The idea of, "she is already yours," reflects a mindset rooted in possession, and possession has no place in healthy human relationships. People are not objects to be acquired. They are individuals with autonomy, emotions, and boundaries that deserve to be understood, not overridden. When you approach relationships with a mindset of ownership, you stop paying attention to the things that actually matter. You stop asking questions. You stop observing emotional cues. You stop developing the awareness required to navigate human complexity. Instead, you rely on assumptions. And assumptions are the fastest way to destroy something that could have been meaningful. Respect, on the other hand, requires awareness. It requires patience. It requires the willingness to slow down and understand what the other person is actually communicating. Not just through words, but through behavior, consistency, and emotional openness. And here's something most people overlook: respect is not just about how you treat the other person. It's also about how you control your own interpretations. It's about resisting the urge to label, define, or claim something prematurely. It's about recognizing that just because something feels significant to you doesn't mean it holds the same meaning for the other person. This level of awareness is rare, but it's also what separates shallow interactions from deep, lasting connections. Because when you prioritize respect over assumption, everything changes. You become more observant, more grounded, more in control of your own emotions. And as a result, you create space for something real to develop, something that is chosen, not assumed. And that's the key distinction. Anything that is real is chosen. It is built over time. It is reinforced through mutual effort and understanding. It cannot be reduced to a single moment, a single action, or a single interaction. So instead of asking, "What does this moment mean for me?" the better question is, "What does this dynamic mean for both of us?" That shift in perspective is where maturity begins. That's where emotional intelligence starts to take shape. And that's where you move from reacting to understanding. Because at the end of the day, physical access can be given for many reasons: curiosity, comfort, emotion, even impulse. But respect is earned. And what is earned holds far more value than what is freely assumed. If you truly want to understand where you stand with someone, don't look at how close they let you get in a moment. Look at how consistently they choose you over time. Look at how they communicate. Look at how they show up when it actually matters. That is where the truth is. Because anyone can share a moment. But not everyone is willing to build something real. And if there's one thing you take away from this, let it be this: never confuse access with attachment. Because real connection is not something you're given, it's something you prove yourself worthy of. If we move beyond the surface level misunderstanding of physical closeness, we arrive at something far more defining in human relationships: emotional connection. This is the layer most people underestimate, yet it is the very foundation that determines whether something lasts or fades. And this is often what voices like Sadia Khan consistently try to highlight. Attraction may begin physically, but it is sustained psychologically. The problem is, we live in a culture that prioritizes immediacy. People want quick validation, instant chemistry, and visible signs that they are winning. In a relationship, physical interaction becomes a shortcut, a way to feel progress without actually building anything substantial. But shortcuts don't lead to depth, they lead to illusion. Because emotional connection cannot be rushed. It cannot be manufactured through a single moment. And it certainly cannot be replaced by physical presence alone. Think about it carefully. What actually makes someone stay? What makes someone choose you, not just in one moment, but repeatedly, over time? It's not the memory of a touch. It's the feeling of being understood. It's the sense that someone sees you beyond your surface, beyond your appearance, beyond your immediate role in their life. This is where emotional intelligence becomes essential. The ability to read not just what someone does, but why they do it. The ability to recognize their patterns, their fears, their values. The ability to respond in a way that creates safety rather than confusion. Because without emotional safety, no connection can survive. People may stay temporarily, but they won't invest. They won't open up. And without openness, there is no real bond, only proximity. And this is where many people get it wrong. They believe that being physically present is enough. That spending time together, sharing moments, or even crossing certain boundaries automatically deepens the relationship. But presence without understanding is empty. It's like speaking without listening. You may feel engaged, but nothing meaningful is actually being exchanged. Real connection is built in the unseen moments, in conversations that go beyond the obvious, in the patience to listen without interrupting, in the discipline to remain consistent, even when there is no immediate reward. Consistency is what transforms attraction into attachment. Anyone can create a spark. Very few can sustain a flame. And sustaining that flame requires effort that most people are not willing to give. It requires emotional availability. The willingness to be present not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. It requires honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. It requires the ability to regulate your own emotions instead of reacting impulsively. Because emotional connection is not just about how you make someone feel in a moment. It's about how stable that feeling is over time. Instability creates doubt. Inconsistency creates insecurity. And once insecurity enters a dynamic, even the strongest attraction begins to weaken. This is why emotional depth always outlasts physical intensity. Physical moments fade. They are tied to time, place, and circumstance. But emotional experiences, feeling understood, respected, valued, those leave a lasting imprint. Those are the things people remember. Those are the reasons they stay. And if you really think about it, this is what people are searching for, even if they don't consciously articulate it. Not just attention, but understanding. Not just excitement, but stability. Not just interaction, but meaning. Meaning is what transforms a connection into something real, and meaning cannot exist without effort. It's built when you pay attention to the details others ignore. When you remember what matters to the other person. When your actions align with your words. When your presence feels reliable, not unpredictable. This is where maturity shows, because immature thinking focuses on outcomes. How do I get this person? Mature thinking focuses on process. How do I build something that is worth keeping? And those are two completely different mindsets. One is driven by ego, the other is driven by awareness. When you shift your focus from gaining to understanding, everything changes. You stop trying to impress, and you start trying to connect. You stop performing, and you start being present. You stop chasing moments, and you start building meaning. And that is when people begin to feel the difference. Because real connection is not loud. It doesn't need constant validation. It doesn't rely on dramatic gestures or intense moments to prove its existence. It is quiet, stable, and consistent. It grows gradually, but it holds firmly. And most importantly, it is mutual. You cannot force emotional connection. It has to be reciprocated. It has to be chosen by both individuals. And that choice is made not based on a single interaction, but on repeated experiences of trust, respect, and understanding. So instead of asking whether a moment meant something, ask whether the connection is growing. Ask whether there is consistency. Ask whether there is emotional depth. Because that is what determines everything. At the end of the day, physical interaction might create attention, but emotional connection creates attachment. And if you truly want something real, something lasting, something meaningful, then you have to invest where it actually matters. Because attraction may open the door, but only emotional connection gives someone a reason to stay. And if there's one truth you should carry forward, let it be this. It's not about how close someone lets you get. It's about how deeply they choose to connect. And when you begin to truly understand the difference between physical access and emotional connection, you're inevitably led to the most important layer of all, your relationship with yourself. Because at the core of every misunderstanding in relationships lies a deeper issue, how you perceive your own value, and how much of that value you try to extract from others. This is where the idea of self-worth becomes non-negotiable. Not as a concept you repeat to yourself, but as a standard you live by. And this is something voices like Sadia Khan consistently emphasize. If you don't define your worth internally, you will spend your life trying to secure it externally. And that's where the problem begins. Because the moment you start seeking validation from someone else's behavior, you give up control. Their attention becomes your reassurance. Their presence becomes your stability, and their inconsistency becomes your anxiety. You are no longer grounded in who you are. You are reacting to what they do. This is why the mindset of, "she is already yours," is not just inaccurate, it's dangerous. It feeds into the illusion that another person's actions can confirm your value. That if someone lets you in, chooses you, or responds to you in a certain way, it means you've won something. But relationships are not competitions, and people are not prizes. The idea of having someone suggests ownership, and ownership removes the very essence of what makes a connection meaningful: choice. A healthy relationship is built on two individuals continuously choosing each other, not one person claiming the other. And that distinction changes everything. Because when you understand that no one belongs to you, you stop trying to control outcomes. You stop trying to secure people through assumptions, pressure, or validation-seeking behavior. Instead, you shift your focus inward. You start asking a different set of questions. Am I someone worth choosing? Am I consistent in my values? Do I bring clarity or confusion into someone's life? This is where real power lies, not in acquiring someone, but in becoming someone. Self-worth is not built by external success in relationships. It's built by internal alignment. By knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you will not compromise on. By having standards that are not influenced by temporary emotions or external validation. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing validation, you become more attractive. Not because you are trying to be, but because you are no longer dependent. There is a level of stability, a level of confidence, that comes from being self-defined rather than externally approved. People can feel that. They can sense when someone is grounded versus when someone is seeking. They can sense when someone is present versus when someone is performing. And that difference determines how they respond to you, not just initially, but over time. Because attraction that is based on need is fragile, it creates pressure. It creates expectations that cannot be sustained. But attraction that is based on self-assurance is stable. It allows space, it allows growth, it allows the other person to choose freely, without feeling obligated or controlled. And that's where genuine connection thrives. This is also where emotional independence becomes critical, not in the sense of detachment, but in the sense of stability. The ability to engage with someone without losing yourself. The ability to care without becoming dependent. The ability to walk away if your values are not being met. Because self-worth is ultimately reflected in your boundaries. What you tolerate. What you accept. What you walk away from. If you believe your value is determined by someone else's attention, you will tolerate inconsistency. You will justify behavior that doesn't align with your standards. You will stay in situations that do not serve you, simply because you are afraid of losing the validation. But when your self-worth is internal, your decisions change. You no longer chase what is unclear. You no longer invest where there is no reciprocity. You no longer confuse attention with intention. You become selective, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. And clarity is what protects you. Because at the end of the day, the goal is not to be chosen by everyone. The goal is to build something real with the right person. And that requires discernment. It requires the ability to recognize what aligns with you and what doesn't, and to act accordingly. This is where most people struggle. Not because they don't understand what they want, but because they are not willing to walk away from what doesn't meet it. And that hesitation often comes from a lack of self-worth. Because when you truly value yourself, walking away is not a loss. It's a decision. A decision to protect your standards. A decision to maintain your clarity. A decision to invest your time and energy where it actually matters. And that's the ultimate shift, from seeking to selecting. You are no longer asking, how do I keep this person? You are asking, is this person aligned with the life I want to build? That question alone changes your entire approach to relationships. It removes desperation. It removes confusion. It replaces it with intention. And when you operate from that place, everything becomes more grounded, more stable, more real. Because you are no longer trying to secure a connection. You are evaluating it. And that is what leads to something meaningful. Because the strongest relationships are not built on need. They are built on choice. On two individuals who are complete on their own, yet choose to come together and build something greater. So instead of focusing on whether someone is yours, focus on whether you are becoming someone who is worth choosing, and someone who can recognize the same in others. Because in the end, self-worth is not proven by who stays in your life. It is proven by what you are willing to accept in it. And if there's one thing you carry with you from this, let it be this: you don't find your value in being chosen. You express your value in what you choose.